In 1917, the Balfour Declaration declared British support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The declaration was made in a letter written by Britain's then Foreign Secretary, Arthur James Balfour, to Baron Rothschild, a leader of the British Zionist movement. The letter was endorsed by Britain's then Prime Minister David Lloyd George, who became a Zionist in 1915. The influx of Zionists to Palestine, supported by the British, was met by fierce Palestinian resistance. The purchases of land by Jews for Zionist settlement displaced tens of thousands of Palestinians from their homes. The entire process was facilitated by the British. While the Palestinian leadership in Jerusalem insisted on continuing negotiations with the British to resolve the simmering tensions, Izz al-Din al-Qassam, a Syrian leader living in Haifa since 1922, began calling for an armed revolt against the British and the Zionists. In 1935, al-Qassam was surrounded by British forces and killed along with some of his men. His resistance inspired many Palestinians. By 1936, an Arab rebellion erupted against British imperialism and Zionist settler colonialism. By 1939, the British had taken a hold of the rebellion. The Palestinians found themselves fighting two enemies, British colonial forces and Zionist militia groups. Although the British had backed mass Jewish immigration to Palestine, the colonial power began to limit the number of Jews arriving to the country in an attempt to quell Arab unrest. The Zionist strategy of expelling Palestinians from their land was a slow and deliberate process. According to Israeli historian Ilan Pappé, Zionist leaders and military commanders met regularly from March 1947 to March 1948, when they finalized plans to ethnically cleanse Palestine. As Zionist attacks on the British and Arabs escalated, the British decided to hand over their responsibility for Palestine to the newly founded United Nations. In November 1947, the UN General Assembly proposed a plan to partition Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab one. Jews in Palestine only constituted 1/3 of the population, most of whom had arrived from Europe a few years earlier, and only retained control of less than 5.5% of historic Palestine. Yet under the UN proposal, they were allocated 55% of the land. The Palestinians and their Arab allies rejected the proposal. The Zionist movement accepted it, however, on the grounds that it legitimized the idea of a Jewish state on Arab land. But they did not agree to the proposed borders and campaigned to conquer even more of historic Palestine. By early 1948, Zionist forces had captured dozens of villages and cities, displacing thousands of Palestinians, even while the British mandate was still in effect. In many cases, they carried out organized massacres. The Zionist movement's message was simple: Palestinians must leave their land or be killed. As the date, May 14, 1948, selected by the British for their Palestine mandate to expire approached, Zionist forces hastened their efforts to seize Palestinian land. In April 1948, the Zionists captured Haifa, one of the biggest Palestinian cities, and subsequently set their eyes on Jaffa. On the same day, British forces formally withdrew. David Ben-Gurion, then head of the Zionist agency, proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel. Overnight, the Palestinians became stateless. The world's two great powers, the United States and the Soviet Union, immediately recognized Israel. As the Zionists continued their ethnic cleansing campaign against the Palestinians, war broke out between neighboring Arab countries and the new Zionist state. The UN appointed Swedish diplomat Folke Bernadotte as its mediator to Palestine. He recognized the plight of the Palestinians and attempted to address their suffering. His efforts to bring about a peaceful solution and halt to the ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign ended when he was assassinated by the Zionists in September 1948. By 1949, over 700,000 Palestinians had been made refugees and more than 13,000 had been killed by the Israeli military. The UN continued to push for an armistice deal between Israel and those Arab countries with whom it was at war. Bernadotte was replaced by his American deputy, Ralph Bunche. Negotiations led by Bunche between Israel and the Arab states resulted in the latter conceding even more Palestinian land to the newly founded Zionist state. In May 1949, Israel was admitted to the UN, and its grip over 78% of historic Palestine was consolidated. The remaining 22% became known as the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Palestinians have been displaced from their homes since 1948 all across the world and in their own land. The apartheid has continued and the Palestinians still suffer under the occupation. We all dream of a free Palestine and hope to see the lands returned to the native people.
مفتاح البيت قلبي وانا راجع وبايدي ولدي ولو كل العالم كان ضدي انا راجع يا بلادي راجع البيت قلبي وانا راجع وبايدي ولدي ولو كل العالم كان ضدي انا راجع يا بلادي راجع.
Thank you for watching this short documentary. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and subscribe.